All right, sixth graders. Well, last time we talked about adding integers, adding positive and negative numbers. Today's focus is on subtracting positive and negative numbers. And just like in yesterday's video, how we went over all the different scenarios you could have with adding integers, we're going to do the same thing today with subtracting integers, getting all those different scenarios. Well, the first one is pretty basic. Just regular subtraction like you're used to. Both numbers are positive. The first digit is larger than the second digit. We just think 8 minus 6. And as you know, 8 minus 6 is 2. That's not hard. Well, sometimes, now that we're getting into negative numbers, you may have both positive numbers, but the first digit is actually smaller than the second digit in the problem. So you think 2 minus 7. Well, don't overthink this. 2 minus 7, all you got to do is think about it backwards, 7 minus 2. Well, you know that 7 minus 2 is 5. But since I'm doing the opposite, 2 minus 7 is actually going to be negative 5. It's going to be a negative number because I'm taking more away than I actually have to start with. Sometimes you're going to get a situation where both numbers are negative, okay? For example, you might have negative 9 minus a negative 4. And so both numbers are negative, but the first digit 9 is larger than the second digit 4. Okay? And so the idea is that you want to think about when you subtract a negative, you're actually adding. Okay? So in this situation, we're actually getting closer to 0 because we're taking away a negative. And so in this situation, you're going to think negative 9 minus 4. You're actually going to think to yourself 9 minus 4. And we know that 9 minus 4 is 5. But since I'm not taking enough of a negative away to get back to 0, because this is less, I know my answer is going to be a negative 5. So sometimes it's important to think, what do I think about? And the fact that when I subtract a negative, I'm actually adding, which means I'm getting closer to 0 from negative 9, but I'm not adding enough to get all the way to 0. I'm only really adding 4. I'm only getting to negative 5. So I can think 9 minus 4 equals 5. Now, what if the first digit is smaller, such as in negative 2 minus negative 7? Now, once again, you'll notice in both of these, I put a parentheses because we like to separate the operation signs. We don't want to have these two minus negatives next to each other. We put a parentheses to show separation. All right. Well, once again, when I subtract a negative, okay, it's like I'm adding. All right. So when I have negative 2 minus a negative 7, it's like I'm adding. But here I'm adding enough that I'm going to get past 0 because I'm at negative 2 and I'm actually adding 7 when I subtract a negative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to think 7 minus 2. And just like we did up here, 7 minus 2 is 5. 7 minus 2 is still 5. Getting a lot of answers involving 5, but that's okay. And so negative 2 minus a negative 7 is 5. You can also think about this as negative 2 plus 7, because when I subtract a negative, I'm really adding. All right, well, if we get where both numbers are negative, like negative 8 minus a negative 8, but they're the same digit, it's always going to equal 0. Doesn't matter whether this digit is 27, whether this digit is 2 million, it doesn't matter. If they're both negative, and I'm subtracting, because remember, this is subtracting a negative, which means it's like I'm adding. I'm just adding as many negative as I have. That gets me to 0. All right, well, what if we have a situation here where one number is negative and one number is positive? Well, we could have that situation, one number being negative, one number being positive. Let's go ahead and put it down here. Like we have negative 4 minus 8. Okay? So when I have negative 4 minus 8, I'm already in the negative, and now I'm losing 8 more. So really all I have to think about is 4 plus 8. Well, I know that 4 plus 8 equals 12. But since this is negative 4 and I'm subtracting, I'm going even less, more negative. my final answer is going to be negative 12. Last one. Let's say that I have 13 minus a negative 5. What does that equal? Well, first of all, we want to remind ourselves that when we subtract a negative, and once again using a parentheses to separate operational signs, when I subtract a negative, remember that that means I'm really adding. I'm getting rid of a negative, which means I'm actually adding to it. So this really is the same thing as 13 plus 5. Well, 13 plus 5 is 18, just like 13 minus a negative 5 is also 18. All right, that's the steps of subtracting integers, folks. Tomorrow, multiplication and division of integers. All right, we'll talk to you later, 6th grade. Bye.